Recognized for your questions.
Mr. DeJoy, the post office, I guess, before postal reform was losing about $1 billion a quarter, about $4 billion a year. Now it's estimated to lose, what, maybe $1.5 billion a quarter, or about $6 billion this year. So, it doesn't sound like a whole lot of success with people talking about, going in the right direction. The question is we've known for, I don't know, a decade, 2 decades, that what the post office sells is diminishing. First-class mail. It's a granted monopoly, but it goes down every year, and I think last year it went down 9%. So you've got a declining revenue source, that you make money from, and then you decided to add 125,000 jobs that were part-time jobs and didn't have all of the ramifications of government employment, which are often 50% more expensive than part-time jobs. Why, in a sort of a failing environment of declining sales and perpetual debts, I mean, just into the future as far as the eye can see, would you want to add more government employees?
So first of all, the first year I got here, we lost $9.5 billion. The year before that, we lost pretty much about the same. The losses over 7 years were over $90 billion. To your point on, and we've had this discussion, to your point on why convert people, because it wasn't working, sir, in the environment. We were in the middle of the pandemic, right? We had about 60% availability of employees. The management at that particular time treated these people as disposable people. Right? We had significant overtime in the middle of the pandemic and trying to move forward. And I have a growth plan, and it's growth in the package business. And in fact, we are growing in the package business. But I've converted 150,000 people to full-time positions because that was the right thing to do in this evaluability to bring stability to the organization.
So basically adding significant costs in an era of perpetual debt.
No, because at the end, because of the stability, right, and because of the attrition rate that we have in the organization, okay, I'm about 20,000 people less than what we had when we came in here. I'm 50 million hours less to do more business today than when I walked in the door. Okay, that's operational management principles, sir. Okay, that's an obvious if you're not in this type of environment, right? It's something that we had to stabilize the workforce. We will continue to hire and staff. Right now, in that we have 30,000 less pre-career people, 20,000 more full-time people, and the stability in the organization. For the peaks, when I got here, we were hiring 40 and 50,000 people for peak. We hired 8,000 last peak, and we did 133 million more packages than the peak before.
And the debts continue to mount. I mean, I don't see a whole lot of change. This 10-year projection is rosy on things, but the immediate debts are year-on getting worse.
Now, sir, we have taken over, so that 50 million hours is like 4 billion, like over two, what is it? It's like $5 billion, a couple of $1 billion out of transportation, and we've grown our revenue significantly. 6.9 billion.
So private corporations face these kind of problems, and when they do, they don't add to their labor costs. They try to adjust. So if you're in Washington State and you have union labor and it's costing you too much, you expand into South Carolina and you hire non-union labor. It's sort of the same principle with government unions. Your costs are 70–80% is labor. Yeah. You compare yourself to UPS, which is also unionized. They're about 50% cost of labor. FedEx, non-unionized, about 38%. So everybody admits that the labor cost is a big function of the problem, not only in the immediate labor cost, not only in the immediate labor cost, but in the pensions, as Mr. Martinez pointed out. But those are labor costs because they're, you have a bigger labor force, you're going to have bigger pension liabilities. But Mr. Martinez, in the private world, you have to account if your pension is short and you're running a private company and you have to make up for the pension with revenue from your company. You count that, right? You count that in how your company is doing for the year.
Contribution plans. They're not in defined benefit plans, which is what we have here. Okay?
So you wouldn't add more people. If you were in private business, you wouldn't add more people to an undefined. You'd add them to a defined benefit because you don't want unlimited costs. You want
defined benefit is when you're obligated to pay a certain amount to the employees.
Right.
Most private sector companies today are defined contributions.
Right.
Okay?
But
So
the
that's a
thing
big
is
difference.
but by adding 125,000, you're adding to the problem. You're not actually taking
by
away
adding
from the problem.
125,000.
By adding permanent employees that will
Well,
be in
that's a
the same
different
sort of
question.
plan.
That's an operating question. That's
Well,
not a
but it's
that's not
part
a
of the
pension
it's part of the
question.
problem. You have a pension problem, right? An underfunding of the pension, and you have
We
to
have a
account
problem
for it.
created by government on us.
You have an underfunded pension, and so you have to account for it, but you're adding more people onto that traditional pension. So we have a pension problem in Kentucky, and it's the same kind of thing. It's the defined benefit versus defined contribution. Most people get what they put in. They don't just sort of get an amount on and on and on. You get what you put in based on the contribution. But you are not changing that model. You're adding more people to that
But
model.
the pension model was thrust on us.
I know, but
It
you're
was not
adding,
us who,
you're adding 125,000 new people to the pension model. So you
that's a
complain
different
about the
question. That's an
pension
operating-
model,
that's a-
but you're adding employees to it. So I don't think you're making your situation any better, and it's not what a private corporation would do.
Well, a
The
private
other- the other-
corporation is not obligated to be in every single delivery point in the United States.
And most private
And that-
corporations don't
and that-
have a monopoly either. So,
and that
you know,
grows-
there is
whoa, whoa,
that
whoa.
as well.
A monopoly
So-
that is declining.
But here's my point. When you get to the pensions being a problem and you say most of this is generated by pensions and past pensions and this was all thrust upon you, that's fine, but you're adding people to that problem. So when you add 125,000 people to it, you are making your problem worse, not better, in the long run. So in our state, what we do is we're hiring people with a different pension plan. They give to a 401k and they're going to get what they put into it.
Exactly.
And that's how you convert. But that's what you should be doing. You should be trying
Right.
to get everybody, you should not hire any new employees. Every year you should get smaller, you should put people into a different type of a pension
We can have a
program.
discussion about that, but we need legislation for that then.
Well, no, you don't need legislation to
For the-
privately contract. You don't need, you had
If
this.
we- we
You're
cannot-
converting from the one thing that actually works at the post office, and that is privately contracting people who are not in the government union. It's the only way under today's rules. I would change the rules. Yes, I would change the rules. I would try to fix your pension. But your other point is that the pension causes so many of these costs, but when you actually look at the pension, you say, well, we have to buy only treasuries. Probably the last year's been the best year for treasuries in the past 10 years.
I'm sorry,
Because
I
interest
respectfully,
rate,
I
because
respectfully
interest,
disagree with
because of
that.
interest rates have risen. This is that you have been in a negative interest environment.
Do you
but
know how,
actually have,
do you know how the Treasury
you
invests?
also have interest rates rising.
Do you know
It's
how-
better than any other year you've had.
Do you know how the Treasury invests our pension assets? Do you know? I
can't-
respectfully
I
ask you the question.
I
If
can't
not-
answer the question. I can't.
Okay, I'll tell
I can't
you.
hear you.
We turn over the money, and they basically put it in a ladder portfolio of 15 years. So we're locked into a rate. The OIG report, and you might be able to correct me, I think our average return in 2022 was like 3.4% or something in that area.
Right. That's probably better than it was 5 years ago, would be my guess.
3.4% when inflation is running at 8%.
No, I'm not saying it's
a
great.
loser.
It's still a terrible investment. Nothing makes sense about the pension program. I'm not here to defend
Okay,
your
well,
pension
so
program.
what's your question?
I'm against your pension program, but I'm against putting more people in it. So you don't quite get it. You want to quibble over the
Senator,
pension
it's an
program
operating-
getting this, but
Senator-
you're adding more people to it. You need to add less people to it, and you need to convert your labor force. It's the only way you can survive. Otherwise, we just keep doling out more massive subsidies to you.
Senator, we have not added 125,000 people. We have less people in our employ than we did before. We attrit 40,000 people a
Your
year.
DFA says you want to add 150,000, and you have added over
I don't know where you're
$100,000
getting
to the
that
government
from.
union.
That's not my plan. And we've used 50 million less work hours, 50 million less work hours this year to do the job. Long range, we will right-size our workforce for the work that we have to do, right? And that is what part of the plan is.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.